When we were at Comic-Con, I kept an eye out for costumes that did their best to put a unique spin on the subject matter. Now don't get me wrong, I'm always impressed when I see a super accurate replica of what we see on the page or screen. But I was more interested in people who based their look on an obscure variant, blended two wildly different characters together, or did their own original design inspired by the various incarnations throughout the years. One of the first cosplayers to catch my eye was this guy.
Hey out there, it's Dude Vader, Chris Canoli. This is my 44th Comic-Con.
Who was rocking an extremely elaborate costume that mixed Darth Vader with samurai armor straight out of the Sengoku period.
So what happened was, Luke and I actually dueled to a draw in the Samurai Steampunk universe.
When creating Vader and Star Wars in general, George Lucas was of course inspired by a ton of different sources. Old sci-fi movie serials, Doctor Doom, and most famously, the Jedi Gekkai films of the legendary Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, which directly informed Darth Vader's imposing armor. There's even been official and expensive action figures imagining what Star Wars would look like through a more traditional samurai lens, but even they lack the details of Chris's extremely cool costume, right down to the katana and wakizashi combo known as daisho.
So what we have is we have the samurai version of the lightsaber, and then because the Star Wars is samurai and Egyptian inspired, and then the 3D print of the Suba is actually the Comic-Con logo.
As the con kicked off, I tried to see if there were any gaps I could fill from older Yellow Spandex episodes. For example, when we explored the evolution of Nick Fury's costume, we talked about the development of the SHIELD uniform, but I forgot to mention one of its coolest variants.
Hi, my name's Renee. I am cosplaying as Agent 13, Sharon Carter.
Sharon Carter debuted in 1966 because, well, it was the Silver Age and Cap needed a love interest.
Stop struggling, lady. We don't like girl reporters.
Oh, I'm not a reporter. I'm a special agent.
Thanks for telling us.
But over the years, Sharon shed her fairly sexist origins and grew into one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most spectacular super spies.
In the comics, she saves the day a lot of the time. She holds her own with Captain America. Captain America, who has superpowers and that super soldier serum, she's a regular woman who gets in there, gets her hands dirty, fights the fight with him, and half the time she's saving his butt.
And the other half, she's assassinating him while under mind control. Now you can often see Sharon in a standard S.H.I.E.L.D. suit, but her all-white variant is by far the most famous.
She does have a black one in the later comics where her hairs are really curly, but in the very beginning it was a white suit. Her straps might be different from comic to comic. I love this comic version of her, so that's why I chose this one. I don't know how she keeps the white so clean. That's my biggest question for her.
Now I might be biased, but perhaps my favorite costume that I saw was this Cyclops. Cyclops pretty much inspired the entire concept of Yellow Spandex, and he's hands down my #1 mutant, so I just had to grab this guy who made his own take on old Slim Summers.
Hey guys, I'm Don Lee, and I'm dressed as Cyclops.
What drew me to his costume wasn't that it was any specific version. In the comics, Cyclops is constantly changing up his look, and pretty much everyone is a stone cold classic. So I asked Don which versions inspired him the most.
So my Cyclops is influenced by many different versions. From the visor is more like the movie Cyclops. Most of it is the 90s Cyclops that you see Jim Lee's design, but I put my own take on it.
The gauntlets are original since 90s Cyclops mostly rocks some rolled up gloves, and his bright yellow trunks are sadly nowhere to be found. But true to form, Don included plenty of pouches.
What does Cyclops keep in his pouches? Well, that's a great question. I would think little like love notes for Jean Grey. I don't know. I actually have like crazy glue and like little emergency things just in case I have a wardrobe malfunction.
Now there are two schools of thought when it comes to Cyclops' costume. From his first appearance up through the late 80s, Scott wore a mask that covered up most of his head. But beginning with X Factor and his iconic Jim Lee costume, he decided to let those brown locks flow free. Today, he's back to the hooded design, but it's never been very popular with cosplayers for very practical reasons.
I am majorly in favor of an open hair Cyclops. The hood, it looks cool drawn, but when you see people wear it out here, not quite. It's not quite exactly good. You have to have the right head shape, I think.
Now, this costume is not comics accurate. It doesn't look particularly expensive, and it definitely wasn't 3D printed. But it might have been my favorite just because of its DIY nature. You can tell he just loves Cyclops and that he had an optic blast picking and choosing his favorite features to make his dream design. Now, if you're looking for something a little more lethal, we ran into two meticulously crafted mercenaries, Deathstroke and Taskmaster. These two hired guns come from vastly different universes, but they've got a lot in common, including their costumes. Both of their original incarnations included a whole lot of impractical spandex and goofy buccaneer boots. But over the years, both characters have received a tactical makeover to bring them a little more down to earth. Taskmaster, an assassin with photographic reflexes, originally wore a goofy skull mask and a hooded cape, but after a manga-inspired redesign from Udon Studios, he's been a little more focused on function over fashion, which made him much more appealing for adaptations.
My style is kind of based a little bit on the Marvel Spider-Man like PS4 game, the PlayStation one. It's a little more militaristic. I didn't want to deal with the cape. I didn't want to wear spandex because I didn't want to wear a dancing belt. And I'm not a very good sewer, but I can build a lot of stuff with foam.
At Comic-Con, we also learned that Taskmaster will be making his cinematic debut in the Black Widow movie, although his costume barely resembles his comic book counterpart. Probably since the MCU already did the whole badass military skull guy thing with crossbones. Deathstroke, on the other hand, has had plenty of appearances in movies, TV, and games, from his sleek and simplified Teen Titans design to Arrow's hockey helmet style, all the way up to his ill-fated DCEU cameo. Now, Bryson's costume here was based on two primary sources.
This design is an original design by myself. It takes inspirations from Tyler Kirkman, who worked on the Rebirth series, and then part of also the Arkham Origin, he first came in, and that militaristic, slimmer type armor was really cool.
Just like Tasky, DC's ruthless Terminator was originally decked out in simple spandex and chainmail, but as tastes evolved, so did Slade's suit.
The art of armor style is so malleable. You can change into your own style. You can base it off realistic things. It's just, armor to me is very inspirational. You know, you can go anywhere with it.
Speaking of armor, throughout the years we've seen Captain America as a Native American, a medieval knight, a zombie, but I've never seen him as a Greek warrior, at least not before Comic-Con.
My name is Yadiel Flores, and today I'm dressed up as what I like to call Captain Athens.
And just like the two mercs, video games played a big role in his design decisions.
I knew he had to have a shield, so I looked at designs of Greek shields. I used actually a lot of reference material from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's one of my favorite games. I originally had a sword with this, but then Endgame came out and he had Mjolnir.
I knew it.
I figured since I used a lot of design from a video game based back in ancient Greece, I would just use a Viking game for Mjolnir, so I based this off of God of War.
It's got everything, the scales, the star, but I was surprised by one omission.
So, did you ever consider going with actual wings on the head?
I did. I originally had made some wings, but I knew I had to travel with this helmet and they would be fragile.
See, that's what I find so fascinating about cosplay. What works on the printed page can be utterly impractical in real life, and I love seeing how people design their costumes around the reality of walking around a convention center crammed with 140,000 people. Now, obviously, we saw way more than just comic book characters. Anime and manga were extremely well represented, like this awesome Alucard from Hellsing.
So this is Jackal and this is Castle, and they're just his signature guns that he uses to kill vampires.
And there's no shortage of amazing looks from the world of games either.
I'm a massive nerd for character design, and League of Legends has so many good characters and like character design. Oh, I love it. The thing is, I want to do so many of them. I did Kindred last year, and this year I'm Ahri, which was interesting to build.
We saw some truly excellent cosplay on display at San Diego Comic-Con. What impressed me even more than how hard they worked on their looks or how accurate they were to their inspiration was just how much everyone seemed to love the characters they were portraying and how amazing it made them all feel. Cosplay isn't just about putting on a suit, it's about connecting with characters and making your dreams into reality. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks to everyone who talked to us at San Diego Comic-Con. We're gearing up for another season of Yellow Spandex, and we need your help to tell us whose costume you'd like us to cover next. Obviously, Cyclops is at the top of the list, but leave a comment and let us know your favorite characters, and as always, please subscribe to Now This Nerd.